Hi, welcome back to Voices from the Hill. I'm State Senator Michael Rodrigues, and we're happy to bring you another episode of Voices from the Hill, where I'm with my two colleagues, Representative Paul Schmid and Representative Alan Sylvia. Representative Schmid, please say hello to the audience.
It's a pleasure to be here. I know this is the second edition of Voices from the Hill, and regrettably, I couldn't make the first, so I'm delighted to be here with you and Representative Sylvia this afternoon.
Thank you. It's a pleasure as always. I have to say, Senator, that this is, I've spent more time with Representative Schmid in the past week than he has spent with his wife. Yeah. I don't know if that's good.
That happens. That happens. You know, it happens, and that's why...
Welcome to the State House.
That's why you create such great bonds amongst your colleagues in the legislature, and how we are like brothers and sisters because we do spend so much time together. And I can think back of, you know, how many times that you're in the foxhole with your colleagues from Greater Fall River and fighting for issues.
Well, you know, just this past weekend, you and I were on the phone with the transportation issue and what was going on with the chair of transportation and the emails and just trying to get some of these things ironed out. So it was an interesting weekend in trying to get that worked out. Of course, we were able to get through that in the House, and happily we're at the point we are now with that 97-55 vote. I'm happy, and I know all of us in the South Coast are with what happened with South Coast Rail, because I think it's fair to say, you know, and I think it's an important point. I know you were going to mention it, Senator, but people should know that we're unified when it comes to South Coast Rail. There's not a doubt in anyone's mind that South Coast Rail is an important economic developer, important to our economy as we look into the future of Fall River. And I can't think of a legislator in our general area here that's not as concerned about it as we are.
Well, maybe it'd be important for the viewers if we could frame the issue a little bit. And let me say, I know this show will be airing throughout the month of May, but the date today is, we're recording this on Friday, April 12th, and the legislature is in the middle of debating a transportation finance bill. This bill, for the first time, we're talking about creating new revenues, and in political speak, that means new taxes, by the way, specifically to fix what we all recognize is really broken in our transportation infrastructure system. Items such as the fact that for over the last 20 years, we have paid for many of our employees of the Mass DOT through bond authorizations. In other words, paying current operating expenses on a credit card. We all know that's wrong, and we have to bite the bullet, and we have to fix that. We also know that our regional transit agencies, in our case SERPID, has been grossly underfunded, operating on a deficit model, in other words, not forward funded, but working unsure on what their real operating budget is going to be for the current fiscal year. And this legislation before us is an attempt to fix that. Also, we want to ensure that our so-called Chapter 90 dollars, that's the state money that we send back to our local communities, back to the city of Fall River, to help the city maintain its roads and bridges and its transportation infrastructure. But we, in the South Coast, also see it as an opportunity to ensure that there is funding and language in this bill so that South Coast Rail can proceed to the next phase. We are just completing our permitting phase, our preliminary planning stage, and as soon as we get our last few handful of permits from the federal government, which are imminent, then we are going to move into the engineering and construction phase, and that's when we will need real serious capital dollars. The House, as all finance bills and money bills do per our Constitution, has the first crack. Money bills, taxation bills, by our Constitution, have to start in the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives this week debated that bill And I'm very, very proud of my colleagues in the House for what they were able to, in language specifically, they were able to include in the House bill for South Coast Rail. And I'll let my colleagues from the House maybe take a crack at that.
Well, we think we made some progress, Senator, in that we were able, through a tough fight all Monday afternoon, we were able to get in the bill that we passed Monday night at about 5 minutes of midnight. We were able to get specific reference to South Coast Rail in the bill, and also a provision that as we take the Department of Transportation maintenance off of our credit card, and that opens up borrowing capacity, that borrowing capacity will be reinvested. So two things. It's got to be we've got to invest, and South Coast Rail is mentioned. I was pleased with the outcome, weren't you,
You know,
Representative?
As the senator knows, we didn't have that language up until later in the day on Monday, as you know, Paul. We held out, and I'm glad we did. We held out so that we could get that language. That vote was going to be very close in the House, and I'm happy because, you know, the statement that I was giving, and it was coming from many other legislators, not only from Fall River but from the Bedford area, was we're not going to be taxed any longer in Fall River and not get anything in return. For more than 20 years, the people of Fall River have been told we're getting a train, and there's no train. You know, and then to say, well, you know, we're going to go up 3 cents on your gasoline, we're going to, you know, $1 on cigarettes, and not get a train, and not even have a train mentioned, was a slap. So we held out. The speaker called us in at 4:30 in the afternoon and said, look, what do you need? And my response was, we need more than language. We need revenue source. And the revenue source was that capacity. Through that, what you just mentioned, Paul, having that bond, having that capacity available now, and speaking with Chairman Dempsey, talking about in the area of $50 million. Of course, the Senate has to do a number on this, but $50 million at least by 2014 to get the engineering, to get the permitting and started. This would be a giant step forward. Now, none of this is going to be easy, but I want the people to know that we struggled for this, and I'm glad we stuck together, and I'm glad collectively we were able to do this. Now, I was talking to Senator Rodrick as we were passing this vote that night. He was calling me in the chamber, and I know he had talked to you as well. There was a lot of activity. It was my first experience to go through that. I'll never forget it.
That was quite a night, wasn't it?
Yeah, and but I felt so good that we were all on the same page. It made me feel good because we need this so desperately in this community when we're looking at jobs. You know, with the highest unemployment rate in the Commonwealth, we need this desperately now. You know, now it's going to the Senate. It's going to the Senate, and that's where you're headed, Senator Rodrick,
Yep.
tomorrow, and it's going to be a big deal. And maybe you could explain where it goes after that.
Absolutely. What happened was the House concluded its deliberations and voted to pass this transportation financing bill forward. They did wonderful work by getting this language via an amendment into their version of the bill. Now it's the Senate's turn, and like I said, it's Friday afternoon that we're recording this program. The Senate's actually in session tomorrow on Saturday to debate this bill.
That's unusual, isn't it?
It's unusual. It's unusual, but it's not unheard of. We've been in, and you will be in over weekends also, I promise you. But it's unusual. So I'm happy to say that the language that the reps worked so hard to get adopted as an amendment is embedded in our bill. So our bill has that language embedded in it, which means my job is a little easier on that matter because I don't have to play offense to try to get the amendment in. I just need to play defense to ensure that it's not pulled out of that bill.
Or enhance it.
Or enhance it, and I can tell you that I've got about a half a dozen amendments that will enhance it. What the Senate also did was add a couple $100 million to the revenue stream of this bill. We did not change the basic tax structure that was outlined as the Senate did, but we did things. For instance, we're requiring the Mass DOT to enter into lease agreements with all of the utility companies that use the Commonwealth of Massachusetts right-of-ways. And it's interesting how this issue percolated. I chair the committee on revenue, and we heard from colleagues of ours from out in Western Mass, out in the Berkshires, that we have instituted, about 4 years ago, we instituted something called Mass Broadband, that there were pockets of this state that had actually absolutely no access to high-speed internet. So we have, as an economic development tool, are stringing these fiber optics around the state. And come to find out, the utility companies are charging the Commonwealth of Massachusetts rent to use their poles and their infrastructure. But guess what? Those poles and infrastructure are on Commonwealth of Massachusetts land that we're not charging you rent for. It's akin to, Representative Sylvia asking me, Senator, can I use your garage to park my car in your garage over the winter? And I say, sure, be my guest. And by the way, can I put something in the trunk, store something in the trunk of your car while it's in there? And you say, sure, but I'm going to have to charge you rent for it. It's not fair. That's another $40 million revenue stream that we found. There are other ideas that we're percolating forward, because the purpose of this bill is to provide revenue for future transportation projects and also fix what's broken currently. We, as a delegation, all stuck together very, very well. I can tell you I'm in regular conversations with my Senate colleagues, Senator Montigny from New Bedford, Senator Pacheco from Taunton, to ensure that the language and funding stream is in for South Coast Rail. I feel very good about it. We will have another opportunity in the near future where we actually are going to do a transportation bond bill. Now, the vernacular gets very confusing to people, and I understand that. And I think that's why there's been a lot of misrepresentation about what's happening and how committed we are vis-a-vis the governor. And let me say, the governor, Governor Patrick and Lieutenant Governor Murray, has been 100% supportive of South Coast Commuter Rail. Where we disagree was the amount of taxes that we should be raising in total. We are raising enough revenue in our bills between $500 and $600 million in taxes, enough revenue to pay for what's broken in the transportation infrastructure system and provide for future expansions, including South Coast Rail. The governor had a very grandiose tax plan that raised almost 4 times what we're raising. That money, we are spending more money on transportation this next fiscal year than the governor even proposed. But he took that money and spread it throughout the budget. That gets into another thing, the operating budget. So there are many different vehicles, each with a focused purpose. And I'm very confident and comfortable that our team here in the South Coast did a tremendous job ensuring that South Coast Rail, when the permits come, when it's ready to put a shovel in the ground, that we'll have the financing available to do it.
And I'm glad you brought that up too. And Paul, Representative Schmidt and I have talked about this. To raise more revenue, to raise more taxes.
Yeah, call it what it is. It's a tax.
That's what it is. To raise more than we have to is irresponsible and poor leadership. It's easy to call for 1.9 or 2.9, but this is on the backs of people who and look at our communities, but I don't care whether you look at a community that's unemployed or a community that's working, still to increase their taxes when you look at some of the tax increases that were proposed, this would be devastating on families. So to take more than what is needed, and you're chairman of revenue, some of the proposed revenue possibilities that we're looking at with the internet, for example. That's incredible. And those are millions of dollars that can be raised with not a lot of effort, not a lot of pain to the average person? If maybe you could mention, because I get excited. I get excited about that, Senator, because it's good.
You're talking about the possibility of taxing
The internet
the
sales.
that
Actually,
Amazon makes
yes.
Yep.
coming into Massachusetts.
Right.
Unfair
Our
for-
sales tax statute and many of our tax laws were developed prior to the internet. When the sales tax was established in Massachusetts, they didn't even know what the internet was. What happens now is, as you know, when you buy something over the internet, they do not collect the sales tax from you. You go to a brick and mortar store, you go downtown Fall River, you buy that same product, and you have to pay the sales tax. It does not mean that you are not responsible for that sales tax. You are responsible. But there's no easy collection mechanism, and it becomes very easy for people to avoid paying those taxes. So many states throughout the country are beginning to develop an administrative framework to collect those taxes. Now, we are not going to be able to actually collect those taxes until Congress acts because of the Interstate Commerce Clause. Congress is very close to acting. Even this Republican Congress is very close to acting because they see it not as creating new taxes, but just a mechanism to collect the taxes that are due. They also see how it's innately unfair to our brick and mortar retailers, to those small businessmen that are in downtown Fall River, on Main Street, everywhere, that have to pay for rent, have to pay for their building, that have employees that they're hiring in their store, that it's they are at an unfair competitive disadvantage to those internet sales. So we are drafting language. There are right ways, we're learning right ways and wrong ways to do this. What I've discovered is the state that's done it right so far is the state of Virginia. By the way, a Republican governor in the state of Virginia. The state of Virginia has crafted the best method, administrative method. We need to create the administrative framework so that when Congress does authorize that, we are ready to roll. We're being proactive. We don't have to say, wait, we can start collecting these taxes, but we need to develop this framework. That could take, we know, months, a year to do that. So we're beginning that now. This could mean conservatively $300 to $400 million immediately for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
And I'm sure by the
What a
time,
difference that would make.
Yep.
and when you look at that, and you look at, we were talking the governor's budget of 1.9, and you look at that, and what you were talking about, what we actually need, what we can raise, and a word we haven't mentioned, and I think it's important for people to know because we're hearing it more and more, and we're going to be hearing it on the Hill very shortly, reform. There's lots of problems. We know it. It's not a Republican issue. It's a people issue. When we're looking at fraud, no matter where it is, if it's $1 million or $20 million, obviously the speaker has come out. President Murray of the Senate President has recently spoke today in the Herald, Boston Herald, about the EBT card and welfare reform. There's holes there. If someone's unlawfully getting money, taxpayer dollars, fraudulently, we have to stop it. We have to stop that bleeding. If there's millions of dollars, those are millions of dollars. We were at a meeting this morning when we're looking at higher education. Higher education, those millions that are being lost could support all of higher education, their entire budget. So it's lots of serious work. And we're not talking here about taking away from people who need. The people who need it should get it. But we're talking about people who are walking around with 2 and 3 EBT cards. You know, the complete fraud. We need to get a picture on an EBT card. We need to do some things, and I think people want to hear that.
Well, and I think that's why our budget, which has just come out to the House from Ways and Means, did not include incremental financing for early education, because we have discovered that the department has not been supervising the early education centers as they should. And I think the notion is, hey, wait, before we put any more money at the situation, let's make sure that we've got it right.
And it's
So
sad
that's-
because, you know, we talked about early education. I would love to see every 4-year-old child in school, public education, 4-year-old, to have it. You know, we're hearing if you can have a child reading on the 3rd grade level, you know, in the by age 5, you know, reading on the 3rd grade level. Imagine getting a child in school at age 4.
Go ahead and brag a little on your
Yeah,
daughter.
my daughter's an engineer. I was
This
saying
is a wonderful story.
You heard this morning. I was talking to college students. My daughter was in early childhood education at age 3 in Dartmouth, and thankfully I had the resources. We could do that then, and she's an engineer today because of that. I believe that early foundation. She was reading in kindergarten. She was reading on the 3rd grade level. Children, if you're exposed to that at an early age, you can do that. There's no reason why we can't do that in Massachusetts. But again,
Well, I think, and we have done that, and we've made a commitment to early childhood education in Massachusetts. You know, I share the concerns of the Speaker in the House. Maybe we went too far, too fast, and we did not build into the agency proper controls. And I have no problem. We're not saying cut it all out, stop it. We're just
absolutely
saying
not.
we're just saying, whoa, put the brakes on this growth until we can ensure that we have the structure and the mechanism in place to properly administer these monies. Because we're talking a couple $100 million.
Yeah.
So we're not talking chump change here. We're talking serious money. Because we all agree. We're very, very proud. Massachusetts is #1 in the country in public education. Our students do better than anywhere, any other state in the country by far. A big issue in Massachusetts is the fact that some of our lower social economic communities, like Fall River, like New Bedford, like Lawrence, like Lowell, aren't doing as well as some of the wealthiest suburbs. The root of many of those problems, though, is not just money. It's not just throwing money at it. And we recognize that, and we're working very, very hard to get education parity around the state. And you're right, Representative, that, you know, reform has been the mantra of a half a dozen years now. I can think we've done transportation reform, we've done education reform too, we've done 3 phases of pension reform, and we should be very, very proud that Massachusetts was one of the only states in the country last year that had our bond rating improved, that we are handling our fiscal situation during this global recession better than just about any other state in the country. And, you know, that's not really a sexy topic to hear that, oh, our bond rating went from single A to double A. But that means hundreds of millions of dollars in savings when we have to go out and bond, when we borrow money. Those are real dollars that we can turn around and invest in early childhood education or a public higher education system.
And this matter of reform, of being careful about where our money goes, this isn't a Republican idea. This isn't a Democrat idea. This is,
you know,
this is a
I said this the
legislature
last
idea.
time because I think lots of folks get confused because they hear about what's going on nationally
In Washington.
and they hear, you know, that Congress, the Republicans and the Democrats don't. As you know, we speak. I have, and Paul has to his right in the chamber, and to my right, I have probably the most liberal Democrat to my left. My left is Gloria Fox,
Yeah.
and to my right, I have a Republican, and I sit with lots of Republicans in Section 2, and I know you.
And we learn a lot from
And
them.
they are some of the nicest people, and
Yep.
great ideas,
Yep.
and you know, I just again, great ideas, and lots of what I have to tell you. You know, one of the issues that they came up with the other day, the cigarette tax, for example. You know, how far do we tax one item? How far do we go? And one of the Republicans stood up in the debate and mentioned all of those border communities, New Hampshire and Massachusetts, the last time they raised cigarettes $1, many of those convenience stores went out of business. Now, how are we helping them? Because it's the same is going to happen again. It's going to go up $1. They're all going to close. Those people are out of work because they're going to go into New Hampshire and buy. And Rhode Island, Mass, people who smoke here. You know who smokes? Poor people. Yeah. Poor people smoke. We're hurting poor people.
Yeah.
So, you know, it sounds easy. We can pass this on. The heck with the poor people. We'll charge another $1 to smoke. It's, you know, we don't want. Let's hope they don't all stop smoking, because where are we going to raise that revenue from?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring that up, because in my discussions with the Senate President as we were putting together this revenue package, I didn't have a knee-jerk reaction against not raising the cigarette tax, but we had always, and this isn't the first time we've raised the cigarette tax. Matter of fact, my first vote in 1996 was to raise it 25 cents. That created our first prescription drug program in Massachusetts. But every time we raised the cigarette tax, it went to healthcare-related costs.
Not the case any longer.
Not the case any longer. So I do have a philosophical disagreement with this revenue package. But, you know, we learn you can't fight every battle.
No.
You can't pick every battle.
The highest smokers in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are in the South Coast.
I believe that. I would.
The highest lottery ticket purchase is in the South Coast.
Yep.
And it's amazing, we get the least, you know, when we look at fighting for South Coast Rail, when I heard, and Paul heard this as well, we were in Democratic caucus, and I heard a Democratic, a Boston representative say, we don't care about your train in Fall River.
And they don't.
You know, I'm getting very nostalgic. I'm remembering buying a carton of Marlboros at Paris Island
Oh my God. Well,
for $2.50. 10 packs of
that was
cigarettes.
a long time ago.
Huh?
Now it would cost you
We've learned a lot.
$70.
My dad started smoking when he was in the Korean War
And we know
because
it's
it
bad.
came part of his K pack, his
We know
K
it's bad,
rations,
but
and we know
lots
that.
of people,
We've changed.
lots of poor
yeah.
people are smoking, and we're hurting them.
I guess
I hate hurting poor
the
people.
The point I had tried to make that obviously did not move forward was that I firmly believe there should be some sort of nexus between the taxes that you raise and what those monies are used for.
Yeah.
In this particular instance, I was an advocate for the gas tax, and I would have even gone more than just 3 cents. And I'll tell you why. It's because the gas tax is almost like a user fee. It's paying for the roads, this money, these transportation dollars are paying for the roads and bridges that you're driving on. Plus, those taxes can only be used on transportation. The way we ended up structuring this was a hybrid model. What we're actually doing is dedicating the additional gas tax and a percentage of the sales tax into the Transportation Infrastructure Fund. And these other taxes that we raise, cigarette tax, and a number of corporate taxes, are used to backfill the hole that we create in the operating budget by dedicating that sales tax dollars. I understand that. I don't think the general public would understand that.
One of the things I learned at your presentation when you did up at the, what was it, the Beacon Hill, the...
Bringing Beacon Hill to the South Coast.
Yes, when you had the transportation secretary down, that we're paying, and I think it's so important for people to know this, we're paying 21 cents of every gallon, 21 cents is mass tax.
Correct.
We're paying one of the lowest in all of New England. New York's paying 50 cents a gallon, 43 cents in Connecticut, 32 cents in Rhode Island.
We're still going to be the lowest in the area.
We'll still be the lowest. Of course, that doesn't make the pill easier to swallow for some folks.
Right.
However, gasoline fluctuates every day. The cost per gallon fluctuates. So any given week, you could see, let's say, $3.43, $3.40 a gallon. It changes that quickly. So I think it's not so bad when we look at 3 cents in comparison to what they're looking at in Connecticut or New York. So as you said, we're still not very high when we're looking at what this cost, what we're going to be receiving from it.
Well, and I hate to cut you off, Representative, but I know that time is getting short. It's amazing how 30 minutes flies when we're talking about issues that we're all so passionate about and we spend so much time thinking about and debating. And any closing remarks from either?
From me, just to say that when we meet again next month, the House will have worked over our budget. There's a lot of things we got to fight for: youth build, safe and successful youth.
Lots of great programs. We're meeting with them every day. Today we were with higher education. You know, the youth bill, the grants, the Shannon grant with the, we're looking at education, for example. So many.
Good luck in your budget deliberations, and we look forward to coming back again for another version of Voices from Beacon Hill. I'm State Senator Michael Rogers. God bless all of you, and thank you for tuning in.